Okay, well, as we wait on Jaha to join us, we're going to go ahead and get started with this session on investing in female founders and logic. We're really grateful to have Kirsten Franklin, co-founder of Celebrity and MyFitPod, as well as Elizabeth Davis, principal at Female Investors Lab, and hopefully Jaha, if she can join us, the regional UN Women Ambassador for Africa. So excited to have you all here. And I think just to kick us off, if you wouldn't mind giving a bit about your background, and this is kind of just ad hoc, but why are you passionate about logic or World Logic Day? So I'll start with Elizabeth. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure, happy to.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be a part of the panel. So Elizabeth Davis, like Chelsea mentioned, I'm an investor at Anthemis on the Female Innovators Lab team, investing in female founders in fintech in the pre-seed and seed stages. My path to venture was both from the operator and corporate side. I had started my career at Coca-Cola in global sustainability, where I was working across the world in India, China, and Turkey on our global sustainability strategy. And really there was when I first started working with women entrepreneurs on our 5x20 program at the time. I ultimately left Coca-Cola to join a company called On Purpose with two other founders. So working with Fortune 500 companies on their impact and purpose strategy, and then got recruited to join an ad agency called Warn, where we were working with female founders on branding and web design and campaigns. So really focused on working with founders. And honestly, there was what ultimately drove me to venture, because I saw such of this disparity between venture funding that was going to female founders and realizing that I really wanted to be a capital allocator and invest in women, especially within fintech. And very much, excited about just the purpose of this panel, and so excited to be here. So it's a little bit about me.
Great. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. And great that we finally have all of our panelists here. Thanks for bearing with us with the tech and the various links. Kirsten, do you want to share a little bit just about your background and your passion for logic?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Again, like Liz said, I'm super excited to be here and what this panel is all about. My name is Kirsten Franklin. I like to call myself a recovering attorney turned entrepreneur, life and business coach. And I've spent about the last 15 years building companies, my own companies, other companies. As you heard in the introduction, those are actually two of my newest companies that I co-founded during the pandemic that deal with health and wellness. So super excited to be here. As for logic, it's logic. Come on, people. I'm really excited to learn about how we're advancing not only gender equity, but sustainability across all 17 goals. Here on this day today. So excited to be here.
Great, thank you so much. And finally, Jaha, would you go next to share a little bit about your background and why you're passionate about female founders in logic?
Absolutely. So my name is Jaha Dukureh, and I am originally from the Gambia. I'm the founder of an organization called Safe Hands for Girls, which deals with tackling harmful traditional practices like female genital mutilation, as well as child marriage. But in doing the work that I've done across the continent of Africa and here in the US on both of these issues, I realized that the root cause of a lot of violence that women continue to face around the world is embedded in poverty. And if we really want to strive for gender equality or even gender equity, it's important that we invest in women, so which is one of my passions. And recently I started a for-profit company, which would be the sustainable arm of the work that I do, that's dealing with regenerative agriculture, clean energy, as well as STEM education, especially for girls.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And we're so excited to all of our panelists for being here. So I'm going to kick us off with our first question for this panel, which is, how are you thinking about new decisions and initiatives in this next year? Why supporting women and girls important in this moment? And just sort of additionally, what is the why behind why you do this work? And I will go in the same order. So Elizabeth, if you want to start.
So much pressure kicking it off. Of course. So, I think that this is a really exciting year, especially as I think venture capital female founders in driving capital to women, especially in this space. When we looked at 2021 as a year, funding in women founders went down, even though we saw huge capital flows into the venture capital ecosystem. And so very disheartening to some extent. Women got more money overall, but because there was so much money that was flowing into the system, they still got less from a percentage perspective. So that's something that, especially at the Female Innovators Lab, we're super passionate about, of how can we both drive more capital to women founders within fintech and co-founded teams, but also create more of an ecosystem around that as well. So whether it's connecting women founders who maybe aren't in fintech to other investors that really make a ton of sense for them and really the sector that they're investing. And also then this sort of ripple effect too, when you think about community building in general. So that's sort of a big priority for us. Our fund went from a $15 to $30 million fund last year. So it was very much that we took a bigger stake of saying, we want to drive more capital to women. So I'm very excited for that. I mean, we also saw it too last year, so many IPOs with women founders. And so I'm excited to see what happens this year as well, and hoping that we see more and more. So those are sort of a couple of things that I'm really looking forward to, and seeing how much capital we can have go to women in 2022.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Elizabeth. And I know my co-founder and myself at Nova Impact, we talk a lot about how women are often well-versed or educated regarding to philanthropy and giving, but we need to help support one another in terms of investing as well. And even as women founders, as we scale our companies, as we do well, there's always ways that we can begin to learn how to invest in other women and girls. So excited to know what Elizabeth is working on. Kirsten, I'm going to turn it to you for this question as well. If you just have kind of comments on what Elizabeth has shared.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible because like Elizabeth said, we all know the data, and it's interesting that even though there was more funding, we actually got a smaller percentage. I was like, how does that even happen, right? Especially at a time when women are making up even more of a space, a headway, and being larger in numbers with being female founders. So it's interesting, there's more of us out there, and yet there's more money, and yet it's a lower percentage, right? And I've had this conversation with a lot of women's groups. I mean, as you guys might know, I've been at this for a while, being a former attorney, coming into this male-dominated space, being a minority in that space. I remember being like almost the only Asian female lawyer when I first started. So I was just like, okay. With Girl on Fire podcast and all the other things that I do, we've had these conversations, and it's really one of these things that I think has just matriculated through time, being that, let's take it from the beginning when only men were allowed to go to university and get educated and vote, right? So you tend to gravitate towards the people you're familiar with, towards the people that you've done work with, towards the people that you've been educated with. And that just kind of matriculates. And I think that, now I'm super excited. I think over the past 2.5 years, there's been so much more movement of women having each other's back, women creating venture capital funds and doing these things that we can really launch that. But I mean, this isn't like a man bashing thing either. It's just like, if you look at the statistics and data, I don't care, male, female, LGBTQ plus, whatever, when we all come to the table and share, that's when things really happen, because we're taking this really diverse set of backgrounds, thought processes, ideas, and coming together. And, that might have started with, women coming to the table, but I think I'm just really, really excited about what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years when we actually see it come to fruition. I'm really keeping my eye on to see how much money is really going to us and what are our companies doing over those next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think we'll hear from a few different women communities later, like the Fourth Floor, and some other great ones as well, Dreamers and Doers. And I think, or even, Nova, we have quite a few women investors and founders involved. But I do think it's really important, this conversation around what communities to join, but also in the spirit of Logic Tree and Logic Day, thinking about how do we also work with men investors and men groups as well, right? How do we make sure that everyone is brought to the table and that we're all working towards better solutions and capital getting to where it needs to go? So I think it's really important that we think about all the different viewpoints and the vantage points as we're trying to move the needle forward. Jaha, do you want to share? And I'll just repeat the question because I know it's been a minute since you've had it, but we're talking about what are you thinking about in terms of new decisions and initiatives in this next year? And why are you so passionate about supporting women and girls? And why do you think in this particular moment or in this new phase of the world that this is important?
No, absolutely. As you know, I come from a total different perspective. Born in the Gambia, I went through female genital mutilation when I was 1 week old. And then I became a child bride twice in my life. So a lot of times the world and the development community, as well as the investment community, they see women like me as victims, and not a lot of girls that have similar experience or backgrounds that I do make it this far. So I think for me, realizing that money is important and investing in women is important, that's the reason why I will continue speaking out, and I will continue showing the world that we are more than that. As the youngest African to ever be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and a lot of the work that I've done over the years, it continues to be a challenge to raise money for the work that we do. But I'm a strong believer in the fact that aid cannot fix our solutions. And it's important that women have enterprises. It's important that we're investing in their businesses. We're investing in their growth, because I do believe that that's the only way change is going to happen. And that is why I am still passionate about this. And that is why I will continue working on this.
That's amazing. And I don't know if the audience felt this way, but I got like actual goosebumps when you were talking. I think to share our experiences or to know where you're coming from and to have gone through what you've gone through and now be on the other side and saying, look, this is where I've come and this is why I care about investing in the next generation. That's so important, not just to all of us, but to the future of the world. So really excited to have you with us. All right, so now I'm going to turn to our second question. So our second question is, for those that are looking to invest various forms of capital into women, what is important to look, why is it important to look at data and impact? How are you thinking about how you're sharing about measuring impact? If you're on the side of a founder, a nonprofit or community grassroots advocate, and then as an investor, what are you looking for in terms of when you're evaluating what to fund? And the last thing I'll just say, this is more on the Nova impact side, but we really do feel that all forms of capital matter. So your time, your finances, your network. We really encourage our members to give all the various forms of capital that they have to what they care about. So Elizabeth, I'm going to have you go first again.
Love it. It's such a great question. And I think I love, Chelsea, the way that you're thinking about that, of like the 3 T's of being able to give your time, talent, or treasure. My brain, especially being from the VC seat, immediately went to like angel investing or investing in early stage companies, what we personally look for in companies, which is very different than if I say was like investing my time in a nonprofit or charity or whatnot. I think Jaha's point was so good about the importance of investing in women founders and how, and I saw Alexis's comment in the chat too, which I think is so true, is when I invest in women founders, it's not because I'm like, oh, this is a charity that I'm investing in women. We've seen returns that often women actually outperform male founders. And so it's something that it's not just good for investing in women, but it's also good for you as an investor. And so I think that that's just something that's really important. When I think about the VC seat and what do I look for in a founder, it's very much because I'm looking so early, it's so founder based. So why is this founder the right person to solve this problem? Why are they going to be able to solve it against any other competitor that potentially is currently existing or is going to start a company in the future? I think a lot about the market size too. So is this a big enough market for us when we think about, could this be a $100 million business? And so some of those pieces. And then I think too, I mean, because we look so early, sometimes our founders don't even have, say, like a product that they're showing us yet, but they'll show us like mock-ups or even maybe an MVP in the market. And just, I love asking founders the way that they're thinking about what that build will look like for them. So those are a couple of things of what I look for my seat as an investor, especially on the early stage. And then sort of, I then look at that a little bit from the angel investing side as well. But yeah, I can dive deeper into anything that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm gonna let us just kind of open up a little bit. So Kirsten, you have anything to share either on the question or what Elizabeth shared?
Yeah, I mean, as for what she was saying is what she looks for in investments, same thing here. I really look at the person first. I want to understand what is their personal drive behind trying to solve this problem? Why are they passionate about it? And honestly, are they going to be able to last 8 to 10 years if this is the thing that they're doing? Right? Like, Yaha, immediately you're like a yes. Like, you're like that. This is the person who's going to drive the train home, stay on the train forever. Even if the train falls off the track, she's going to pick it up and put it back on and she's going to keep going. Right. And that's really, really important because, there's a lot of times where you, or at least I, speak to startup founders. And I can tell you almost immediately, some of them are like, nope, not going to last. And then some of you are just like, you're just like, oh my God, this is great. And then you have to look at the idea itself, right? Like you said, market share, what is the capacity here? Are you solving a real problem? Who cares about this problem? Right. And just really look at that market size and its potential for growth. But that's kind of some of the things that I look for.
Jaha, can you talk a little bit about just in terms of being on the ground and a community leader and grassroots, like for girls like you that have a hard time even seeing past, the next day or the next year, what got you through some of this? And now being on the other side of it, what continues to drive your passion for this space?
No, absolutely. I mean, listening to both Christine and Elizabeth, being that I'm on the other side of things. I mean, I think the recent experience that I will share is recently I was asked to go back home to the Gambia and run for president. And I think this was one of the worst experiences of my life, I would say, as a woman, because of the amount of ageism and sexism that I faced. But not only that, it was also hard. I think what made this process really, really hard for me was the fact that I couldn't find anyone that was willing to support or invest in our campaign, and which is what eventually made us lose the elections. But, coming back to where I am now and the reason why I can't give up is when I was in the Gambia, I traveled across the country, went to every single village. And what I saw is there's a lot of women who are out there when they eat lunch, they can't afford to feed their children for dinner. And there's a lot of families that go to bed hungry. We have a lot of land that can be used for agriculture. We can create our own food security. It's just a matter of investing in these women. Because one of the things that I discovered during tour was the fact that a lot of women in our communities are petty traders. They sell vegetables, they grow vegetables and then sell them in markets. But because of the lack of access to refrigerators, if they don't sell everything, and the lack of processing facilities, as a whole country, we don't have a single processing facility. So for me, I think I took the loss and looked at the opportunities that are there and the things that we can do to not only grow our economy, but also create employment opportunities for women. And I think right now that is more of what I'm focused on. And since, this conversation is about female founders and women investors, if any of you are interested in learning more, I'm at the very early stages of this. If you're interested in learning more of what it is exactly that I'm trying to do and the kind of investment that we need, definitely, I would love to connect.
Amazing. All right. So I'm going to wrap us with our last sort of question or thought, and know that we're coming from different vantage points, which I think is really great in the point and the spirit of the day. But how do we best support founders, investors, these initiatives, and really thinking about the other side and understanding that, capital isn't necessarily moving at the pace that we might expect it to towards women investors and women founders? How do we move forward? How do we work with the existing systems and inspire change? Elizabeth?
Oh my gosh. Great question. And especially since it sounds like we're probably wrapping up with this question, Kirsten and Jaha, you're both, amazing and so incredible to just hear. Even Jaha, that you're casually just running for president of your country. I'm just like, that's amazing. So huge shout out to you. I think there's a couple of different things. I think one of the things that I talk a lot about, and that's really important to me personally, is that we just need to have more women allocators at the table and driving capital to female founders. Because currently currently right now in venture capital, there's only 12 to 14% of investors are women. So an incredibly low amount of just women who are VCs. So we need more women at the table who are making those investment decisions of where capital is flowing. I think the importance too of building, like for me personally, I think about a lot of co-investors. So who, for example, makes sense to co-invest with, for maybe other funds that maybe who haven't invested in as many women founders? How do we bring more voices to the table who maybe have been historically male dominated VC firms in general? And I think the last one, I mean, what gets so frustrating to me is when people say, oh, it's a pipeline issue, there aren't enough women that are starting companies. And that to me is just such a crutch, because I think about, for us, we've talked to, I mean, more than 700 women founders in fintech. So it's an incredibly niche market of where we're looking to invest. And yet we've talked to hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of incredible women in fintech. And so it's something where it's like, you need to build your actual pathways and pipeline to find those women who are starting companies in those different areas that you're looking to invest. I feel like I could talk about the subject forever, but obviously super passionate about it. So any investors, to Jaha's point, that are interested in investing in female founders, co-investing, reach out to me. And then also any women investors would love to meet you, or any female founders in fintech as well.
Yeah, I love it, Liz. Jaha, I'll be reaching out to you. I definitely want to talk to you about some things. But you know, from my perspective, being both a founder of businesses as well as sitting on the advisory board of multiple companies, yeah, when you just said that people have said to you that there's not enough female founders out there, I just like, I don't know what my face might look like on the screen, but I'm like, that's crap. I'm like total crap. You know, being and Jaha can probably understand this. You know, it doesn't always have to come from the traditional methods. You know, there's ways to give percentages of interest in companies and find the right people to partner with. You know, fill in those gaps. And not only that, like, who's going to be the mouthpiece for the company that you're starting, right? Like, you might not have the capital to go after maybe some large heavy hitting influencer, but like, you know, for my startup Salubrity, if you go to mysalubrity.com, you know, we have investors like Dave Meltzer. Why? Because he was the founder of Sports Fund Management. You know, he has access to a bunch of athletes, and our brand is going to be, you know, started with a bunch of athletes. So, you know, it's like you have to find those pieces, and that doesn't cost you anything. And in fact, he gave us money, and he's going to help us, right? So I mean, like, you have to get scrappy. You know, I'm working with a company right now called memelord.io. If you go there and you look at that, you're like, oh my Lord, how did you do this? They did it on $40,000 to date over the last 6 months. I mean, I'm blown away. I'm like, and here, you know, me and my friend Meta Artest are building these companies, and we've spent millions and we don't look as good as them. I'm like, how did you do that? Right. So, I mean, you can get scrappy. You can find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And that's one of the things I would say when you are getting shot down by all the traditional methods, by all the, you know, angels or VC or can't get a bank loan or whatever it is you're trying to do. If you want it, you'll find it. There's going to be a way. That's really all I can say.
Thank you.